I'd like to welcome everyone to the seminar tonight, put on by our very own Alison Strang and Denise Jacoby, judging the Nova Scotia duck tolling retriever. It's been a long time since Alison's done her seminar here in BC that I know of for
many years.
We more local folk and a number of you from away, I will say. So Alison Strang is a long-time breeder of duck tollers here in Canada. I think probably all of you are familiar with her name. She lives not very darn far from this very hotel.
That's right.
And don't know who the dog is in the picture, so I'm going to stop being distracted by it.
No, she's not identified, but most people would recognize that picture. Of course it's Bonnie.
Hey,
Who else?
I'm into service here. What can I say? I apologize for not recognizing Bonnie.
No, why would you?
Without further ado, I will turn the microphone over to Alison first.
Yeah.
Denise first. Alison first. Yeah. So please welcome Alison and Denise tonight.
I would just like to say what a great pleasure it is to have you all here, and I'm particularly grateful to Denise, who only flew in this morning from Australia. You talk about down under, I think, she's sure which way is up yet. So let's just get on with this. This was actually mainly written for judges, but today it's really more like a slightly in-depth discussion of the Toller standard for you. So we'll just carry on with that. I would like to say to all of you that never please lose sight of what this dog was bred to do, which was tolling or luring ducks within gunshot range with its extremely animated retrieving style. The retrieving part actually was introduced into the dog later. So we do need to remember this, that this is not just another of the retrievers. This is a very special retriever. So I'm sure you all agree with me on that. But so we'll just get started here. I've split this up so that it's the probable origin. You can all read up there, breed characteristics, anatomy, and a review of the standard. Okay, Mary Ellen? There. I subscribe to the theory that this dog, the Toller, has at least the same roots as the small Dutch Kooikerhond, which in the Middle Ages was known as a piper dog, was bred to lure ducks into nets before guns, fowling pieces became common. And from there, it was probably taken to England, undoubtedly taken to England by Flemish engineers who went over to help drain the fen country in southeastern England. And a great expert on old dogs, Colonel David Hancock in England, is quite sure that there was a dog in England in the Middle Ages called a red decoy dog. And he's quite sure that this would be one of the ancestors of the Toller. It also was an ancestor of the Tweed Water Spaniel, which in turn was an ancestor of the Golden Retriever. So there you have it all coming full circle there. And I do believe this theory. We can't actually prove it, but it makes sense to me. Okay, Mary Ellen? And I believe it's very likely that some of these decoy-type dogs came with people from Brittany and Normandy who were among the earliest of the French settlers, came over with Cartier and later on with some of the others, and eventually settled in Nova Scotia in the what became famous or infamous as the Evangeline country. So this is, I believe, how this dog came to be in Canada. And then doubtless bred with other dogs that were in that area. There's a marked similarity between the Toller today and the Dutch Kooikerhond, which is Quaker meaning pipes, or it's actually would be more or less a Dutch equivalent of a piper dog. And they really are extremely similar. Nowadays, there's the odd one left, or odd decoy left. There's one in England. They are used to ban ducks for research purposes now. And when the early French settlers came and settled on, you see where it says Digby, and then around into the Minas Basin, that was the area that was settled by the Acadians, the French-speaking Acadians. And then, to our everlasting shame, were uprooted from there, and many went off and were sent down to Louisiana, which is where the term Cajun comes from now. But there were people who never left and who hid out in the woods and for a number of years. And I think it's quite possible that they had these little dogs with them, and certainly helped to keep them fed. It's all speculation, but I think that it's quite strong. Okay, Mary. Before we leave that, I think you might want to. I just got a few notes here about that these dogs were known up and down the east coast as far south as Chesapeake Bay, but they were originally known as just little dogs who lured the ducks in. They did not retrieve them. The retrieving was introduced later, and I myself believe it must be from the same origins as the Chesapeake Bay Retriever. There is a distinct resemblance between Chesapeake puppies, Toller puppies, and so I think this is really how the evolution of the dog took place. I do not subscribe to the theory that Mr. James Allen in the 1870s bred a liver flat coat to a spaniel, and because the people around Yarmouth, which is the home of the Toller in Nova Scotia, they knew of these dogs long before the 1870s. And nowadays, this tolling as a method of hunting is dying out, but you still have to remember the origins of the dog and what it was bred for and why it has these playful actions, and certainly is quite different really from all the other retrievers in many aspects. Now, for the breed characteristics, you've got you've got this dog with a huge retrieving drive, but with that, he has to be sturdy, he has to be compact, he has to be powerful, and he has to be athletic. He's an absolutely tireless retriever, and he has some attributes of the same as the Border Collie. The Toller has an insatiable retrieving desire. The Border Collie has an insatiable herding desire. Tollers are, on the whole, not quite as intense as many Border Collies, but they're getting on that way.
Could I just interrupt there a moment, Alison?
Beg pardon?
Could I just make a point?
Yes.
To my mind, the Toller is a dog with a high work ethic, as is a Border Collie. The difference to me is that a Toller is a people-focused dog. It's a gun dog, it is a companion. And so when it works, it's insatiable. But it's
Want me to turn around this way?
Whereas the Border Collie, when he works, he just gets out there and works and works and works. So that's to me the difference between the two work ethics of those breeds.
But you do have some Tollers who are self-workers and not necessarily.
I'm not saying they don't show initiative, but they're very much a companion working with you.
They also do have their own strong idea of what they're supposed to do, and they can possibly resist. They can resist. Yeah, of course. Okay, now we all know the lively, the alert, the intelligent. You have to remember that I prepared this for judges who weren't all familiar with the breed as you people are. Okay. Now, we'll just start off with type here. I've got 4 good types. This was this dog was an influential sire in both North America and Scandinavia. He had good, strong bone, nicely balanced, beautiful proportions. He was a thoroughly nice dog, and he has left his mark on the breed.
Who was he?
Does it really matter? It's westerlies coast to coast. I mean, unless you know your taller pedigrees, these dogs are all from a long way back, okay?
I know my taller pedigrees.
I know you do, Sue. Yeah. Now, Denise will know this dog. This is a lovely bitch from Australia. I think she's an excellent type of the slightly shorter leg, deep-bodied type of Tola, which I would have to come right out and admit right now is my favorite kind. Her proportions look pretty correct to me. She's got a lovely neck, beautiful top line, great coat, beautiful head, nice feet. I don't know what isn't to like about this bitch. Okay.
She was taken 2 years of age and she was out of coat.
Nevertheless. Now here's a young dog
Taken at 2
who,
years of age and she was out of coat.
this is a young dog in Norway. And his feet are in the snow, which makes him, he was a little short in the leg for my liking, but it makes him look even shorter because his feet are hidden. Beautiful type, lovely neck and top line, great expression, eyes a little bit light, lovely markings, good coat, gorgeous tail, gorgeous tail. To my mind, the tail is the Tola's crowning glory. And I love a good, that one's maybe slightly overly feathered. I do like them to be a bit on the bushy side, but this was a lovely dog. Alas, he's no longer with us either.
Note the insertion of the neck into the shoulder. Beautiful insertion of neck into shoulder.
Yes,
flowing
well,
through.
that's the whole with the lovely neck and top line, yes.
The shoulder assembly has to be good in that dog. If it wasn't, that neck wouldn't exist in the way it does.
Right. Thank you, Denise. Now, this was a beautifully proportioned, balanced male, very strong bone, good color, lovely forechest on him, lovely white markings, beautiful tail, very strong dog. He was a big dog. And this dog brought in his limit of ducks one day and then went in and won an all-breed best in show the next day. And was a very influential sire, especially in Ontario, in the earlier days in Ontario.
How tall was
He was about 20 and a half inches.
Oh, he was bigger than that.
Well, that's what I was told.
Bigger than that.
He was supposed to have been measured at that. I don't know, I never measured him.
Remember, it's at the wither.
But
where is the wither?
Judge.
Yeah, but where is the wither on that? Where is the wither on that dog? You see, he's very upset.
What is more is where is the highest point of the wither.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we won't, but he was a big dog. He had the most magnificent top line. You could have put a glass of water on that and it wouldn't have spilled. He was a wonderful, wonderful dog. So those are my 4 good types, and they're all a bit different from each other there. I like his proportion of leg to his length of body. So there you go. 4 good types. Now we go to Mary Ellen. What do we go to? No, I'm going to give you a very short anatomy lesson here, just if you don't really know your dog structure. And if you don't, please go and get a book or go on the internet or something and learn a bit about dog anatomy, especially if you have ambitions to breed. So we've got your front. When people talk about front angulation, it's the angle of the, yes, I'm doing that. Thank you, that's good. Yeah, of the humerus or the upper arm and the scapula or the shoulder blade. There we go. That is your front angulation. Now this dog, this this was a golden, of course. This was in Chris Zink's book, Jumping from A to Z. There's a lovely forechest there on this dog, and good angles. So if he didn't have that good forechest, his angles wouldn't be so good.
Placement of the shoulder on the chest is very important.
Yeah, yeah.
If that shoulder was placed a little bit further forward, then the dog would be slightly steeper.
Okay, now we're going to go back and match up pretty well the angles in the angle from the top of the pelvis through and down to the patella there, down the femur there. That's fairly much, it's not all exactly there. So you want front and rear angles that match.
The bottom two angles, if you take from the patella back to the heel bone.
Yeah, well,
and-
then you
and
could
the
carry
forechest,
that on,
that
yes.
should be the same.
Now, I have to say that we get very few tollers with lovely short hocks like that. We just don't.
So why is it that a dog that's steep in the shoulder doesn't look like they have any neck?
Because the shoulders are placed further forward on the chest, which brings the wither up. The neck is there, but the neck is
They have the same number of vertebrae.
Yes,
however, the
yes,
wither is up high on the neck.
yes.
Because the placement of the bearing in mind, the shoulder blade is attached to the rib cage by muscles. So if that's attached a little bit further on the same dog, same beautiful chest, but just goes in a tad, you see what happens with my hands?
Yeah.
They're slightly narrower, and in order to balance, it's got to come up a little bit like this.
So does
How do
the
you think?
dog hold its head differently?
Generally speaking, more upright.
So
In extreme cases with a very short upper arm and a forward-placed shoulder, you'll get a dog that is U-necked, very high.
And then would that affect the way their back is?
Depends how long the dog is.
It just
The length of
depends.
the rib cage
But
plays
it's
a part in
definitely going to affect the front movement.
Yeah.
And in tollers, you get many, many tollers with a reasonably good shoulder layback, scapular, but that humerus or upper arm, instead of being like that, it's like this. And that is going to, and quite often with a shorter upper arm. And that gives that very choppy movement.
No, it is shorter.
You can feel it. You can feel it in puppies.
When you run your fingers down the shoulder blade, if you feel for the spine of the scapula, remember it's a plate like that and it has a spine. And if you feel that quite firmly, you can feel the length of that shoulder blade, then take your fingers back toward the elbow and you feel the length of this and the length of that, which is why judges go like this.
And they should match.
Yeah. Well,
They
it's
should,
very
ideally,
very
they
different
should be
time.
the same length. But
Yeah,
I mean, I
because
do
it's
that
just
with
good.
puppies when I'm evaluating them, you know, to see, and you can see it in young puppies. So that's a bit of an anatomy for you, just to help you with you know, get to know these things. I don't want to dwell any more on that
No.
right now. Okay, Marianne? So now we sort of get to the breed standard when we'll break it down in just this here. I'm not going to read them out. You can all read. So we'll go to the size and proportion one here. Okay, here's a toller silhouette. And this silhouette is a great thing for you to train your eye on. And, okay, Marianne? The toller should be, and usually is, slightly longer than tall. And the emphasis on slightly. Believe you me, I've had some that are like freight trains, you know. So, but that is, and 10 to 9, I always have troubles with proportions, but I stuck that in there. In other words, it just should be slightly. Because if that's inches, then that's what you're saying is if it was 20 inches high, it would be, or 18 inches high, it would be 20 inches long, which, I mean, I don't think is right, but I don't
I
know.
would say 8 to 10. That's pretty well accepted as a balanced,
Yeah,
slightly
yeah.
longer.
So,
Slightly off square.
and your average dog will have some kind of construction, something like this. Okay? Now, we have this thing about the level top line, and believe you me, there are some people that nitpick about a level top line, being absolutely level. But if you go back, Mary Ellen, could you go back to the skeleton? Now you look there, you see over the lumbar vertebrae, and just when at the top of the pelvis comes, there is a slight rise. It's generally over the end of the loin area. If it's further back, then that dog is high in the rear, and that is not good. But, so it's not dead level, but it's pretty close.
Does your standard state a level top line?
It does say a level top line. I think maybe we should change that too. Yeah, because there is a bit of a difference. But you can feel, if you run your hand over a dog, you will tend to find they're not absolutely.
And would there be an example of a breed that has a completely level top line, like maybe a Wheaton or something?
I don't think this is, I mean, this is a fairly generic skeleton. I know it was a golden, but you know, your gaze hounds have a different thing because they have a bit of a roach in their back,
It's actually,
and that's why it's supposed to be hinged.
the croup,
Yeah,
which is
over the croup.
from
Yeah,
the hip bone down to where the tail comes off.
yeah.
If you've got a long croup and tends to be sloping, then you've got a lower set tail, and most of the sighthounds particularly will have that longer croup. A flat coat retriever, if you're looking at the difference between a flat coat and a toller, a flat coat has a little more slope and a slightly longer croup proportion-wise to a toller, which is just slightly less, and the tail comes off nicely off the back.
There again, many tollers have very low tail sets and that's
And it's usually carried down on the
and then that's it's denoting a fault there in the rear. Anyway, we'll go back. I just wanted to. We're going to the level top line.
Lower croup create the tail that hangs over the back.
Well, well, no, I think that's something we might deal with because I'm bringing you a dog to show that does carry that high tail, but that's only, you know, when she's in real alert and high action.
There's a difference to having a dog with the tail coming nicely off and carried up like so, and a dog that's got a sloping croup and carrying like
Yeah,
hooking back
yeah.
like a teapot handle.
And a lot of that depends on, because then it means that your croup is angled too steeply.
Too steep.
And
that
then
shows
your
a high
tail's
movement
coming out.
and balance.
And then that you can quite often be the dogs that are high in the rear too. Okay, level top line, more or less, but with a slight rise over the loin. Now, people say to me, how can you tell strong, medium bone? I mean, you really can. You can. If it's overly heavy, the dog is going to look too heavy and cloddy. If it's too fine, you're going to have quite often what I call hairy whippets with very fine bone and don't really look like they could bring in a goose to save their life. They might be able to. Avery Nicholson said he didn't care how big the dog was or whether it carried a duck in or a goose in. If they had the heart to do it and drag it up the beach, he didn't care. So that anyway, strong medium bone, and it's generally slightly oval. It's not real round bone, it's slightly oval. Deep in the chest. Way too many tollers have shallow chests. Some of them drop with age, but there are a number that don't have enough. That chest has to hold your heart and your lungs, and they have to have room to work. You need that deep chest.
Can I just point out
And-
something? How important the underline is as well.
Well, yes,
balance
you
with the
can.
top
Yes,
line.
thank you, Denise. Yeah, with not too much tuck up.
Absolutely, but it's very important to have a good flow in the shoulder, down through the top line, which is almost level, and a nice smooth underline. If it comes up like so, then you're going to have problems in that rear assembly. It's going to be untypical of a toller.
And that would denote to me to a fairly strong loin when it's deep like that. Now, the long bushy tail we've dealt with, the Tola's crowning glory. And I mean, if you see a Tola in action, that tail lashing back and forth, and this is one of the things that attracts a duck's attention. So if you've got a skinny little tail, it's at least not good Tola type. Tail is very important. Now, I haven't been asking for questions along the way. We'll get to that in a minute, and people are asking anyway, for which I'm happy. Yep. Okay. Now we have to remember that this is the smallest of all the retrievers, but quite honestly, I'm seeing so many that are just way too tiny, and others who are too big. But the standard calls for a male of 19 to 20 inches, or for our European visitors, 48 to 51 centimeters. Now, my own personal ideal is smack dab halfway through that, about 19 and a half inches. But we're not going to quibble over half an inch. The American standard now says 19 inches. Because they told me that they were not allowed to put in half an inch. And so they decided to go for the smaller size because they were afraid people would breed them too big. Well, what's happening is they're breeding them too small. But
Do you still have an inch under or over?
yeah,
Allowable?
we do. We do have an inch under and over.
Allowable.
I didn't put that in because I was trying to keep this type short. Here. The females, 45 to 48 centimeters or 18 to 19 inches. Now, I happen to like a slightly smaller bitch, but I would say but that's only my ideal. If you wanted to use my same logic here, you'd have to say that 18 and a half inches would be your ideal bitch size. But, so that's that. Now, I've just put this in so you can get a sort of idea of some size comparison. This was more for judges who were familiar with Goldens and not so familiar with Tolas. Approximate kind of comparison there. And these, as you see, were from the late Robert Cole's things that he did, You Be the Judge. Okay, Mary Ellen? And I've just got a couple of pictures here, good comparison between a nice golden head and a nice Tola head. Tolas and Labradors in Norway. And now we get to heads. Now, the standard says that the head is wedge-shaped. Now, you want a wedge like that. You do not want a narrow wedge coming to a very snipey pointed muzzle, because this dog has to pick up a bird, a good-sized bird. But you do want that wedge shape, and looking at it from above, it's also wedge shape. You don't want a very rounded, domy skull. You want a fairly flat skull. Both of these dogs have flat skulls. They have different ear sets, but both of these are good heads with strong muzzles, strong underjaw, which denotes a good bite, and these are both good mouths for picking up birds and holding them and carrying them. They also have nice Tola type, good ear sets. The bitch on the right, the ears are just a tad long for the size of head, but I don't have a problem with that. Do you, Denise?
No, I don't, because she's a very strong head.
Yeah.
One of the things I'd like to impress upon people when looking at heads, firstly, it should be a good blunt wedge, not a tight wedge, as Alison says, not like cutting a wedge of cheese. It should be blunt. But the depth of the foreface is extremely important, because that's where the jaw is going to carry the bird.
And that's what I mean by having a strong underjaw.
So you need to look at a head which is clean and well filled in under the eye, not pinched in any way. A good breadth of underjaw, very important, because we're finding narrow underjaws and losing teeth because of it. So the bites are changing. We're also finding foreshortened muzzles to the point where a puppy's mouth will go out and go in and go out and go in, and you're sort of keeping your fingers crossed. Well, that's not really what you want. I mean, hopefully it'll turn out okay.
I would have to say, Denise, and I've differed with you on this before, I have never seen that in all the years that I've bred. I've never seen it.
Yeah.
No,
It
so I
must be
mean,
just the
it's,
line we
yeah.
have. Yeah.
Because usually, you know, if they've got very tight scissors bite at 6 or 7 weeks, I'm saying just watch out for this, because your lower jaw grows at a faster pace than your upper.
Yeah, the maxilla sits
And
before
so
the
you've got to have, you're hoping that they'll end up with a nice, good scissors bite where the top teeth overlap the bottom teeth.
and then sizes, scissors.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
that's really important to look for that depth of foreface and stretch.
So now we have two, well, I love both these heads. And I have to say, I don't even know who some of these dogs are. They just have a very pleasing head. The one on the left I do know. She's a Swedish dog, and I fell in love with her from the minute I saw her. She does have perhaps a little bit too much of a stop. But I find this head very pleasing. I might like a little more underjaw on her.
Stop. What's a stop?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you, you see where, between the eyes? That's your stop, where it comes, where the nose goes up and starts with the skull.
Where the skull meets the muzzle.
Yeah. And there. Yep, that's the stop. And this dog, this is a lovely, strong, masculine head on. There again, this is a bitch on the left. So you've got a differentiation there. That's a feminine head. You should always be able to look at a dog and say, this is a bitch and this is a male. I personally do not like males that look like bitches or bitches that look like males. But that's, again, my own thing. You should be able to see that without even having to look at the other end of the... Have anybody got any questions about heads? Well, we'll proceed then. Well, the expression there, all of these dogs, I mean, I chose these as good examples. I mean, the expression is part of the dog, you know. But some have it more than others. Some have this that just shines out of them, and others of them, you have not to forget the standard that says the dog may have a slightly sad expression until it goes to work. Unfortunately, if it's in the show ring, the judge will only ever see the slightly sad expression. So, you know, it's kind of one of those things. But I mean, the expression is so important. Now, this is just a painting and this is a game, but this, I've never seen a better head, and I've had many judges tell me that this was just a magnificent bitch head. And the expression, the ear set, the width of the skull, the eyes, which are almond shaped, not round, the good strong muzzle, that was it. And I mean, that's a beautiful head. Now, I will also admit to a personal preference for white on the dog. And I don't want to get into huge, long, heated arguments about this, but to me, some white on the dog is an almost essential part of type, because it does make the dog very visible to the birds. And that's the whole idea. But aesthetically, it's very pleasing as well. So there you go. No questions? No takers? Now, we're just going to have a few head faults here. Now, I mean, this dog on the left just gives me the shivers, but it's a, you know, it's got everything there. The muzzle is weak, and it's too narrow, and it's lacking the underjaw. It's got faulty ears, And there it is. It might have been a magnificent tolling dog. I have no idea. Don't know who it is. Now in the bottom, there's a bitch again with an almost masculine head, but I chose this picture because for one thing her ears are faulty, but that's only one part of the dog. The eyes are definitely round, and the whole skull is rounded at the top. These are all faults. Okay, more head faults. Now I'm going to get into trouble here because of saying that the dark pigment gives me I did, but I couldn't take it out of here because I don't know how to do this.
Oh, okay.
I took it out of my booklet. But I still hold to that opinion, but it's only my own. This was a dog I had. I didn't breed him. My husband used to call him our red and white Bernese mountain dog. It's not for his size, but his head, it's a heavy, heavy head.
Don't you think that the white contributes to that look? The heaviness in the head? I do.
I don't think so. Look, it's so broad, it's exaggerated, it's overdone.
Yeah, it's heavy in flu.
I mean, it's possible the white does lead to that, but it just isn't. He was a darling dog, but I mean, he wasn't the greatest head.
I don't mind the shape of the skull and so forth.
Well, the top, I mean, that's okay, but the whole thing it's almost too much. It's just too much of it for a good toller.
If I were critiquing this dog and showing and it was an excellent specimen, the thing I would say at the end of my critique, after highlighting all the things I liked about it, would be, unfortunately, the head is a little too heavy for me. And I would then say...
is that the skull or
the skull?
Or both?
In proportion to the dog. If you're looking at a heavy dog, you're already a heavier head. So I could live with that. But what I don't particularly like is this very, very heavy fluid.
Mm-hmm.
The ear set, the skull is too flat. It needs to be just slightly rounded. And so it's deviating just a little bit from Tola type. It's more Newfian type. It's acceptable, but it's more Newfian type. So if I loved the dog and said this is the best built dog, it's moved better than anything else on it, and of course you'd put it up. But you'd have to refer to the fact that the head wasn't as pleasing as you would like. It's a little bit untypical of the Tola.
And the bottom one is because this muzzle is too short and almost too blunt for... And he has a very wide skull. His head isn't really balanced.
That's the key.
What percentage of Toller type comes from their head expression?
Most of it.
Quite a bit, because head really often I'm not a head breed person myself, but head is so important because it's the first thing that strikes you. And the head also contributes so much to the expression of the dog. So, we're discussing heads here, nothing else.
Form follows function, and remember this is a retrieving breed, so the head is therefore a very important part of this breed. You must have that clean jaw, good width of jaw, blunt muzzle, depth of foreface, nice and thin and chisel through. If you've got a dog working in and out of breeds and things, you don't want him having burst in under the flues and the flaps. You want a clean jaw. You want something that's not going to bite down and destroy your bird. So it's got to have a good mouth and a good jaw.
And I don't have anything actually on here about that. It's in my booklet that one of my peeves is to have a toller with loose eyelids, because these dogs are in there working in grass and seeds, and these can lodge then and give you all kinds of trouble. And besides which, then you get haw, which is the third eyelid, and it's just really ugly, and I don't want to see that creeping into the toller breed. Okay, all right, heads. All right, here we are with eyes. This is a nice looking dog, but I chose him because his eyes are too round there. And they also don't really blend with his coat. You want to see the eye more or less just blending in with the coat color to be I mean, nothing in this world is perfect, but ideally you want an eye that is somewhat, does blend in with the coat. Now this is a place maybe to add that your puppies sometimes go through about 3 changes of eye color before they actually hit that adult color, but you do hope that when it comes in, it's going to fairly blend with the coat.
Can I just point out, Alison, that eye to me is a bit too obliquely placed.
Well, yes. There's just
It
something there
reminds me
too.
more
It's
of a
around.
flat coat or a curly coat with that obliquely placed eye, whereas our taller eyes tend to be more a level open eye.
And then you've got the different pigments here, and they definitely do alter the appear. They give you a different impression, each of these dogs, at the bottom. And the eye, you've got one that's really, really black pigment there. You've got one that's kind of liver, almost a snow nose, and you've got one with the dark flesh, which is nice, and then one with perhaps might be a little bit too pink. You've got to watch the very, very pink ones, because they may be the ones that would sunburn. But you're almost what I call flesh color, which is very common in the breed. It doesn't sunburn. If you have a dog whose nose sunburns, you've got a fault. You've got something faulty with that skin.
From a working perspective, it's not a good thing to have. I always say, Alison, I like the pigment to blend with the coat colour in a mature dog.
Well, yes. I mean, they're going through stages with puppies, but on the whole, the pigment stays. I mean, it comes in very young in puppies. If it's not there at birth, it's there by a week or 10 days.
And we've had a few with butterfly noses that filled in just recently.
Yeah. And
Not
butterfly
mine, but
noses, I sent one to Ontario and said, I don't know how long this is going to take. It was 17 months before they could show him in the showing.
Well, this little guy at 4 months had a full pigmented nose, and he was quite butterfly.
A butterfly nose is a 2-colored nose with either pink and brown or black and pink or black.
Yes, it can even be no pigment at all on the side. And that
So,
usually doesn't come.
There, now, ears. Now this is just absolute. Now you see, you've got these enormous ears, so wide, set way too high on the skull, and I mean the skull is just rounded to the point of. That's a disastrous head. He does have it's almost more like a Vizsla type, muzzle in the front, except Vizslas aren't that heavy.
No
But
wonder
that's an
it's-
awful, absolutely awful head. That's why I don't like doing these things with live dogs when the owners are there. And now the bottom dog, you have the reverse of this. You have a heavy head and little small ears that are just kind of look like they've been kind of patched on the top of the head there. So those are all faults. But I mean, that dog has a strong muzzle. Now we come to and I mean, this is a perfectly beautiful
How are
picture.
they supposed to be? 'Cause I've
Beg
seen
pardon?
everything. How are the ears supposed to be? Like, where are they supposed to sit on the head?
Well, they're supposed to sit well above the eye level, but not right on top of the skull.
Well back.
And then you want them dropping you want a drop ear without being as nearly as wide.
And like how long? Like, I mean,
Well, if we've never really specified that, but if you have one where the tip of the ear comes to the inner side of the eye, that would be good. No more than that.
Is this a good ear set? Is this a good example of ear?
This is I mean, you could say her ears might be slightly long, but I mean, it doesn't really matter. I chose her to show this beautiful neck, absolutely beautiful neck, which we don't get very often.
Do you understand what set means? Whereabouts they are placed on the skull?
Yeah.
actually nipped to the skull.
It's
Not how
where the
dog
root
can
of
lift
the-
ears, but where they're actually placed. You can feel that when you touch the ear.
It's where the root of the ear is actually placed on the
Not
skull.
necessarily. It gives you the sense of the shape of the skull.
Because some of them do kind of carry their ears up a bit, almost that's the collie influence in them, where you get a little bit of them carrying it up and then over. But this was chosen to illustrate good length of neck, but this also is just happens to be a really beautiful young bitch in every way. Front assemblies. Anything more about the neck or the head or the ears or the eyes? Or?
We can perhaps do that when we look at the live dogs.
Yeah, but that's why some of them have been chosen for just these things. Front assemblies are a real problem in tollers. Now here's an illustration of good straight forelegs and strong bone and good feet with pretty thick pads. You get a lot of tollers with crooked front bone, maybe only slightly, but it's there. And you get some disastrous fronts with, Mary Ellen, can you go down to the, do you know what the pastern is there? Above the feet, no, up further, just down a bit, there. Oh no, up, there. That's your pastern. And a number of dogs, their legs come down and then they go out like this at the pastern. That's called being broken pasterns there. And it gives them a really, choppy kind of a movement. It's not a strong leg. I've got a good example of that to show you too. Now this dog at the right, a strong forechest, good forechest there, nice angles of his upper arm and his shoulder. He's got a very strong neck. It's not very long, but that's a very strong neck. That dog would be able to carry in a goose, no problem.
Could you show with the pointer the front angle, the shoulder angle on that?
Well,
Do you want to use it?
I guess
That's the blue
which.
button, the little blue button.
Okay, here's the top of the scapula, the shoulder blade, coming down to about there. That's where the blade joins the upper arm, and this is the upper arm going back to there.
It's a little short in the upper arm.
He might be.
Someone else has also said that the line from the withers right to the elbow should be straight down to the feet.
Well, from the top of the withers,
Yeah.
it ought to ideally hit the back of the point of the shoulder. I mean, not the point of the shoulder, sorry, the point of the elbow.
Yeah.
And come down. Now this dog is set up maybe so his legs are slightly forward. They're not quite back as far as they should be.
I wouldn't like too much more neck on a toller than that, a toller of that type.
I mean that isn't. I mean that I know that it's a very strong neck.
And the reason for that is the purpose. Think again of the purpose of this dog. It isn't to go coursing and swooping down on rabbits or hare. The purpose of this dog is to dash back and forth and to flash and then go in and work in cold, icy water and bring back a very heavy bird. So it must have a good, strong neck. It doesn't want that long neck that's required of some of the other retrievers like the curly coats and the flat coats and the goldens who actually work out more on land.
I mean, and this dog is not bred to range way out of sight, or I mean, he works close, works in with his owner the whole time, with the hunter the whole time.
Lovely low hocks on that dog too. Lovely low hocks on that dog.
Yes, I like him a lot. Still trying to remember his name because I had to have it for something and I can't remember who he is. This is a beautiful dog in Finland, and he's, you could almost say a little too golden retrieverian type. That's the absence of the white, you see. But beautiful. No, that's not Alan. That is that's Alan's half brother. They have the same mother. Lovely angles, See, there it is. It's been drawn on this one. I never felt that his rear quite matched his front in strength. But, I mean, this is a beautiful top line on this dog. Very nice neck, lovely expression, intelligent and just... he's a good-sized dog, but a beautiful, beautiful dog.
Something to look at when you're looking at the body proportions of that dog, which makes him look different from a golden. A golden would be a tad longer in body, but the important thing with this dog is the length of his rib cage. It takes up almost all the length of the body, and that's really important. It's a nice short coupled dog can move.
Believe me, we have plenty that are longer in the body too, but I mean this is a...
That's why I'm saying this. You know, you can have the right length of body, but it's what's in that body that's going to work, and you need that long rib cage.
This dog has been not only a great hunting dog and a great winner in the showroom, but he's, I mean, a very influential sire as well. So he's...
I love him.
Yep, I love him. Okay. Body, two different types of dog, both of them best in show dogs. And both of them, the dog on the left I could have done with just a slightly shorter loin on him. But they're deep-chested, both of them have well-sprung ribs. That means that the ribs are coming out not round like a barrel, but good curve in the ribs, giving plenty, again, good room for the heart and lungs. And the actual back is fairly short in these dogs. And you've got, in both of them, not too much tuck up. The underline is not coming up. There's where your hairy whippet comes in with a lot of them nowadays, where they've got rather short rib cages and a lot of tuck up. It's just an example. The one on the right, I never did, I feel his pasterns are weak and his feet are not as round as they might be. But they both won best in show, these dogs. Body fault.
Oh, he's fantastic.
I mean, look at this one. You know, there it is, straight stifle, upright shoulder. You see the show. Mary Ellen can see that I can pretty well tell you that instead of going like that, this shoulder's about that kind of angle, and then you've got a pretty. You've got nothing in front of this dog. It's all
that shoulder is stopping about there.
Yeah, and then
the upper arm is about that long.
Yeah, and there's very little forechest there, very little in front.
The chest is there, but it's tucked way in behind because this shoulder is too steep and too far forward on the body.
And then you see the straight. There's no rounding in the back, no angle in the back.
Corresponding angle there. Yeah. Very, very narrow. There's absolutely no second thigh. A nice, well-muscled dog will have a lovely big muscle here. That has none.
Stifle, Denise, like, where the knee?
I'll put the point.
Well,
that's where the stifle should be on this dog. Yeah. That's where the stifle is on that dog.
Now, how, you mentioned the tail, see that curly lift to the tail? You said that had to do with tail set somehow.
Well, you see that dog has a bit of a steep croup there. You can see it.
There's the croup.
There.
And that's the length of the croup. There's a slope to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, it should be.
This one, is the front and the back don't match. If you had just that front and put your hand over it and then looked at just that back, that dog could be two different dogs patched together.
Yeah, yeah. But, I mean, and I always said, wouldn't it be nice if you could chop about 2 or 3 inches out of the middle of this dog and stick it back together? Because there were a lot of things to like about her, but I mean, the whole thing of that is just... So these are, you know, she was way too long in the loin, and her top line, but it's not, the rise is not over the croup, it's a little further forward there.
She's running downhill.
And she's just, I mean, you know, her legs are too short for her length of body. Okay. Here's a couple of examples of nice, strong. There's a freestanding, but she's just standing out there, but she's standing strongly on those forelegs. And I just found this whole picture very pleasing and an example of a nice, strong rear. This one was chosen more, to me, she's a bit too long for her length of leg. But I chose her because we have very few tollers with those shorter hocks. The hock being the joint there, from there, Mary Ellen, down to the ground. And a lot of tollers, their hocks are way much higher than that.
And how would that change their movement?
It's got, you know, that's where they push off with from.
So would they have more
Well,
drive?
it,
If
it,
they were longer
yeah.
in the hop, would they have more drive?
They could do it depending on if their front and rear angles match. So that otherwise, if they've got more angulation in the rear, they're going to overreach their front.
All of the muscle is in the upper part of the leg.
No, it
Yeah.
shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So if the hock is too long, they don't have the power in the upper part.
What normally happens, if you have a long hop, it's usually associated with a fairly short stifle as well.
So you don't have the power.
So you don't
But
have the
we've
power.
had many tollers with very good, not long second thighs, but very good, strong, muscular second thighs. So in the end, maybe it's a combination of the bone length and the muscle that is going to give you the movement.
You can assess this quite easily by standing behind the dog, putting your hands to the upper thigh and feeling the width this way.
Oh, yeah.
Not from the side, but this way, because that's where the muscle bunching is. These
Yeah.
dogs require bunchy muscles, not like a greyhound which needs a long elastic muscle.
Yeah.
Different function. So you do that with the upper thigh and come down below the stifle and you should feel a nice rounded muscular thigh, second thigh.
Yeah.
And that's giving you the strength. Then your hop is your foot,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
where
pushing
the
off.
attachments and
Yeah.
tendons are.
So you know,
Yeah.
they've got to be able to get that toe in and push. So
Yeah.
if you've got a long one, it's slightly restricted.
Yeah.
It usually
But
means
of
like
course, a
Achilles
lot
tendon
of the
top.
breeds have got much longer second thighs than tollers do. You know,
These are medium.
proportionally for the,
Yeah.
depending what the breed was bred to do. And because this breed was just bred to work along with the hunter, dash out and retrieve sticks and then swim out, you've got to have the kind of construction that makes for a strong swimmer,
A nimble dog, I
which
like to
is,
say.
yeah,
Nimble.
but also for the swimming
Yeah,
part of it.
absolutely.
You've got to have good muscles, you've got to have, you know, good strength in the rear to get that kick that's going to do the dog. I have never understood why the Chesapeake Standard calls for the dog to be high in the rear, because I don't know what difference that makes.
Makes it a chassis, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, but unless you had it, most of them had high rears, so they just said, well, this is the way they're supposed to be.
It's probably more utility dog than that.
But I remember going to a seminar that Robert Cole gave, and he talked about how the Chesapeake had helped make them a better swimmer. And I said, have any of you ever swum beside your dog underwater and watched it? Dead silence. And I tell you, you know, if you swim alongside them underwater and watch how the back legs kick and propel the dog forward, and the front is coming out like this and then going around like that, just like a breaststroke. And there's a man who writes about Newfoundlands, about how they have a unique swim, and that they come around and do this. That's bull dust, because I've swum alongside a Toller and a Newfoundland together, and they both swum exactly the same way. Anyway, let's get on here. Tail. Here we are, back to the crowning glory. But I like myself the adjective luxuriant here, because it really should be. And this kind of tail is just that. And it should reach the last vertebra of the tail, should reach at least to the point of the hock.
I like it halfway down.
Well, I mean, but I mean the absolute.
Yes.
The absolute minimum would be just reaching. A Toller with a short tail is, woof. And this one, I mean, this was just in action here, but it's curled kind of in a loose sickle. Not quite an inverted C, but sort of just coming out like this. When it's gating too in the show ring. It's the most pleasing tail carriage.
I always
Okay.
say in my lecture to the judges training scheme that the toller is the only gun dog retriever that is required to have its tail. Absolute requirement. If it hasn't got that tail, then it's not a toller.
But you now notice how many of the other retrievers are now carrying their tails up like this?
We actually, when we first put a toller in the showroom, we had one judge, no award because it carried its tail up.
Yeah, we've had that happen here too, Denise. Anyway, we'll get
We
on to
educated him.
coat and color. Thick, thick. Thickness is the operative word here, not length. The coat must be thick. If it's too thick and too long, then that's a hindrance in the water. But it's the thickness that's the most important. Thick double coat with a dense undercoat in season. I mean, there's going to be seasons when they've shed it out. But considering that these dogs were bred to retrieve out of the Bay of Fundy, which has some of the coldest water south of the Arctic, they were bred to retrieve from very cold water. I have a preference for vivid colors. I do not like to see tollers of kind of wishy-washy, washed-out colors. I want them nice, bright colors, whether it's red or orange or whatever, but good, strong colors. Like this dog. I like the analogy of coppery red. If you think of a brightly polished copper penny, lovely color for a toller. Actually, not quite as dark as this. And with the characteristic white markings.
Yes, to some.
It's so easy to get the perfect white.
There's no such thing as perfect white. I take issue with you on
I
that.
know.
I really take issue with that. One of the things I have to keep, because I lecture to attorney judges and to judges, and one of the things I have to continually say to them is, if you read your standard, it's quite explicit. It tells you exactly what you need to know. And in nowhere does it say a toller has to have white. And they nearly fall off their chairs.
It says
and then I
usually
say-
some of
and
the
then I
following
say,
white
it's
markings is
usual
what it's
in one
worded,
of
how it's worded.
4 places. Now, of course, it looks attractive to have it here, there, and everywhere, the 4 places. But when I'm judging tollers, being a toller specialist, it makes people say, oh, she's a specialist, so they go to watch to see what she does because they don't know how to judge the breed. I have to be very careful. When I go over for colour, I feel underneath and see just how much white is there under that dog. Because if you flip it over, and this is all white, and you've only got a red blanket over the top, you're in trouble with your breed. If you breed on with that, you're not going to have, you'll have coica wings, you won't have tollers. So it's important from a breeder's perspective to realise that while it is attractive, it's essentially a red dog with white markings. It should never be a dog which is in the balance, because that gene is very...
I've never actually seen one with an overabundance of red over white. And with all due respect, I was mentored by a man who didn't show very much at all. He was a hunting dog. And he drilled into me the fact that these dogs had to have white because it made them visible to the birds.
Absolutely.
It's nothing to do with the show ring.
Yep.
What about the black that we're starting to see? I've seen a bit of it coming out.
Well, if it's just black at the tips, it's probably actually slightly brown.
You'll find that's probably, if you put it on
Some
a
kind of
microscope, that
mutation.
is usually a shaded red, which is mahogany red, which looks very dark and can look like black. But if you check it, 9 times out of 10, it's not black.
It would be sort of dark chocolate, yeah.
And it's quite acceptable as far as I'm concerned as a breeding dog, provided you check it and make damn sure it isn't a black marking.
But you also have to remember that the standard lists as a disqualification any colors other than red or orange.
That's right.
And a black or even a chocolate brown dog is not red.
Chocolate brown dog is a different colour gene entirely. It's actually a black gene. I'm not going to give you a lecture on genetics, but it's quite different from the gene which gives you the coppery red or orange, or the agouti, which is what gives you that shading on the tips. And I think all tollers have that shading
Yeah.
in their coat.
Oh, they should have.
Some
I mean,
to a
there's
degree to the extreme. Some.
But in breeding, if you start to see that black, would you run screaming from that?
I haven't seen that. I have seen very dark dogs, which when I take the hair and as they grow older, they're shaded.
Is this black in an adult or is it in a puppy?
It's staying.
Well, it's a year and a half.
I'd like to see the dog before I can make a comment.
Yeah, because in about my third litter, I had puppies, and it looked like black on the tips of, and I of course phoned up the woman who's stud dog eyed, and typical newcomer, and she said, "Don't worry, they'll be a nice dark red when they've grown up." And I thought, likely story, but it was so by the time they were adult. But they were always of the darker red, getting on for Irish setter red, which to me I don't really want to see that mahogany
I don't want
color
mahogany,
of the Irish.
How does that play out? I mean, if you bred to it, the male you bred to, was he fairly dark? And
No, he wasn't.
he wasn't.
He wasn't. And I mean, this is in early days, and there were far fewer dogs then, But I think you'd have to use common sense. And I wouldn't be, if that dog had everything else or a lot of the other things I wanted, but I would be very careful about the coloring and the background in the pedigree of the dog that I chose to breed. Common sense is in short supply nowadays, but it's one of the most important things in dog breeding, is to not get bogged down in a welter of stuff over one thing in a dog.
And bearing in mind you have a very small gene pool, and if you start excluding things which are acceptable, I'm not saying anything that is like, what you're talking about to me sounds like a tricolour or an agouti with a black agouti overlay. That's a quite different gene, and it shouldn't be there and it shouldn't be perpetuated. That's throwing back to something way back in the old Newfoundland type dogs. But because it's a small gene pool, you really have to be aware that there are trade-offs. And it takes a lot of years of knowledge and a lot of study and understanding what it's all about.
Okay, we better move on here, Denise, because okay. Right, this was an outstanding puppy, but he had one great flaw. Can anybody see? Two. Can anybody see in this picture? For one thing, his eye, and he was a puppy here, but his eyes always did stay a bit too light. And he had a standoff coat, and he kept that. He had that coat as a puppy, and he kept it as an adult. It didn't have an undercoat. It stood up. A Toller coat should be fairly flat-lying with the undercoat underneath. And that was, he did a lot of winning. He was as flashy as blazes and showed like a bomb. But he was never really correct in that way, in my opinion. And I bred him, so I can find fault with it.
What was the nose leather like on that dog, the width of it? To me, in that photograph, it looks small for the head.
No, he was all right.
No.
But to me, his head was never one of his most pleasing.
No, the eyes are a bit round.
Yeah. But he was extremely flashy, and he won a great deal.
That's Winnie.
Yes.
And she's tiny.
Now, who is this dog?
That's Ray.
Yep.
Is that one of your dogs? Beautiful movement, look at it. And Denise sent me this picture, and I said, this is what I need, because I wasn't happy with the movement picture I had in this.
I had an email from the lady who owns this dog. Sue.
It's a beautiful movement
And
there,
she said,
and she's
"Oh, what a
head
dog
up
you can
carrying a bird.
And she finds car keys.
But you see how that front leg, how far out that front leg is coming before it's just about to hit the ground there, and how far back the hind leg, which hasn't quite even picked up yet. There's lots of reach and drive behind this dog. It's lovely movement. I adore this picture, and thank you so much for sending it. And I didn't know who the dog was.
She's small, Alison. She's here.
I don't care. She can look at her. She can do the job. That's a nice sized duck she's bringing in.
Yeah. The thing I love about this picture is look at her top line.
Yeah. Now, I suspect it might be going a bit like this, but I mean, it's
She's moving.
carrying a
Yeah.
bird, and you see, if she didn't have that bird, her head would be further down. She wouldn't be, she's even possibly restricting her movement a little bit because she's got her head up carrying the bird, but it's lovely movement.
Yeah. There's two things that I'd like to point out. The extension of that upper arm relies on the length and lay of the shoulder. Now, if the shoulder is sloped like so, that angle is where the dog's foot will hit the ground. Yeah, that's the extension it can have. So the greater the length and layback, the greater the reach. The lift comes from the upper arm. That's what causes the dog to lift the foot, and this causes the dog to reach. The second
And of
thing
course,
I'd
you're
like-
getting the propulsion from the rear
and
as
the
well,
second
a
thing you
strong
need
rear.
to, yeah. The second thing you need to look at is the placement of the back and front feet. You see where she's about to put her foot. She's not going to overreach that front foot. That front foot will come up and the back foot
Yeah.
will go in exactly
Yep.
the same place. She's perfectly balanced on the move. If that back foot was to extend forward, then her balance would be wrong. Her angles wouldn't be matched.
I'm awestruck at the way this dog is moving here, carrying the bird. I mean, it's amazing. Anyway, that's, you know, you've got the animation there, you've got the excellent reach and drive, and that's a lovely illustration of good movement. Okay? Faults and disqualifications. Here's your chocolate brown. You see this too? No, these are dogs in Norway, and they were dogs in Norway. I have no idea who they are. But I thought they were a good example of some rather weird colors. And here's 3 lovely dogs in Scandinavia. I have to tell you that I first prepared this PowerPoint thing for seminars in Scandinavia, which is why I have so many, plus the fact that I'm a great admirer of what the Scandinavians have done with the Toller. So just 3 very nice, all different, but all of them nice dogs. Here's some more. These dogs are in Norway.
Could I just say, when you look at those, even though they're different, they are unmistakably Tollers.
Yes.
Don't suggest to you that
Yeah.
they're anything but a
Yep, yep, exactly.
And that, if you're in doubt, forget it.
Yeah. And that was just a picture of a Toller working, you know. That was before I got that movement one, because that did it. And this is just a fun one. This was in her day. She's since been surpassed, of course, but in the early days of Tollers in Sweden, this was, on the right, the top field bitch, and also a good brood bitch in Sweden. And that's a Swedish hunting horn hanging behind her. And this is a Canadian dog just holding a bird. You know, they're both good brood bitches. Both of them doing a job. And just a cute puppy picture. I couldn't resist it.
Do you see that look? That's the look that Marilyn and I, when we look at puppies and when we looked at the Tollers, if it didn't have that look that by nature, it wasn't a Toller to us.
There's a little softness about a Toller mouth and a little bit of corner and it's just gives this soft kind of expression that's just, I mean, I love that. It's just a beautiful puppy picture. Okay? And this is just mother and daughter. And this is just one of my Norwegian friends. He fiddled around with my seminar and he stuck this picture in and put this thing on it, Fly Me to the Moon, but it's a nice picture with the ears. This is a Toller in Norway with the mountains behind him.
Now that dog could carry a heavy bird.
Yes.
Strong.
Mm-hmm. I just did it because it was a lovely picture. Okay? Just got, these are at the end, they're just, okay?
Oh.
And this is the end, this is the absolute. And that's ending it with a bang. And this is, we have to remember and emphasize, people, that this is our own Canadian retriever. So let's hear it for the duck toller.
Well done, Alice.
Thank you for your contribution. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Attention, s'il vous plaît. Can we have a dog up here, please?
Anybody?
Yeah, we'll just pick a dog. These dogs have been offered to have Denise and I go over them, and some of them are ones that I have chosen because I wanted to illustrate certain points.
Can I make a comment about my dog?
Certainly.
She's lacking her crowning glory.
This bitch had puppies. How old are her puppies now?
16 weeks, I think.
Any of you who've bred a litter, you know what your bitch looks like when the puppies are 16 weeks old. But this is a nice...
Normally she does have it.
So this is just, you know, a nice, strong bitch who's... How old is she now?
6.
She's 6 years old? Wow!
Where did the time go, right?
She's getting to be a senior citizen.
When did that happen, right?
Okay, set her up, will you?
Yeah.
And Denise, I think we'll have Denise go over here and tell us what she finds.
Okay, the first thing I want to say is that when a judge approaches a dog, we're approaching it from a positive point of view. We're looking at the merits of the dog. We're not there to pick faults.
We're also trying to look at the overall dog and not zero in on
So the assessment process starts with, first of all, looking, getting a picture, having in mind you've got a perfect picture in here, your ideal dog. You've learned it, you've bred your standard. You look at this dog and you see, how does that fit my perfect picture? Just by observing, I should be able to, if I'm any sort of a judge, see a couple of things that I need to check, which I then do when I go over the dog. First thing, you always approach your dog with your hand underneath, none of this sort of thing, because sometimes the dog's leaning back and it doesn't do them or you any good. So you approach them underneath, put your hands on the head to get a wedge shape, skull, under jaw, checking that lovely filled in under the eye, ears, they're set beautifully, they're just reaching the eye. You're curious, look at her eyes, beautiful expression. Teeth, very easy. You don't have to go reaching in and wrenching mouths. You can run their thumbs along like that, and you can feel every tooth in the head. And then from there, it's very easy to check the balance. You've got a head here, a neck there, and you should just be about balanced. From here you go down to at least the end of the rib cage, down to the croup and the tail. In this case, the tail should be shorter than the hand from the croup. It was another breed of different. So I'm looking here at croup bone, tail set. Very, very slightly sloping croup. She's just a tad overweight and had a puppy, so the top line's not a fortune at the moment. Tad, see? Okay, if I was standing over this bitch, I would then proceed down here. I would feel, as I said to you, the withers, my thumbs are on the withers. I can feel the points up here on the shoulders. Run your hand down, you feel the point there. Straight down that scapula, that gives you the length of that blade. You come back here, and that elbow from here, the humerus, which is your upper arm, next to the blade, is a beautiful angle, and it's almost equal. Can you see that? Slightly, but you don't expect them to be perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect angulated dog. I've never come across one. I mean, some people may say that.
She looks to lean, have you noticed?
Now, as I said, she's carrying a bit of weight, so she's tending to lean out like this a bit. The shoulders are placed well on the body because looking down here, she's true, front and rear. There's no narrowing here. She's not out at elbow. She's not tacked on in shoulder like a bulldog. That attachment is quite good. I would like to see this bitch's shoulder placement just a tad further back, but she has adequate fore chest, good depth of chest, lovely straight bone, tight feet, underline's good. Feeling around the musculature, once again, feel that lovely thick thigh. You come down here, lovely thick thigh. The length of this to that is beautiful. See that angle? You've got an angle here and an angle there. Same as that angle. That's balance. You've checked the rib cage, it comes to there, there's the loin. So all in all, she's a very nicely put together bitch. As I said, there's only one thing I would like to change, and I'm just a little bit further back facing on here, but a beautiful bitch nonetheless.
Yes. A naked mole rat.
Naked mole rat. Thanks, Laura.
Okay, Mia, that
Thank
was
you.
good, Denise. I'd like you to do that with the dogs, and then there's some of them I want to make a certain
just-
point. But if you would like to go over each one of them like that, I think that's valuable. I have to stand somewhere near here because I've got the microphone.
Oh, okay.
Okay, can we have the next one up?
Table,
16, 17 months?
17 months.
17 months.
So who knows what she'll do up here. Stand. Stand.
They're talking about putting young stock up and not knowing what they're going to do. Don't fuss too much. If the dog's not wanting to stand still, collar should stand still. I tell the judges that. Don't expect a statue in the lineup. It's not in the breed. So if the dog won't stand still, don't worry. Just move around, stand in front of your dog and hold the head. The judge can do the rest. If they're any sort of judge, they'll look at it. That's it, you see? She only needs to look at you. Beautiful expression. Just lovely. Lovely dark eyes. Now this is what I was saying about the ears. They're beautifully placed, very mobile, so they can look like they're laying back. But they're not. They're a lovely ear. It's a nice little triangular, good thick velvety ear, and it just reaches just past the eye. 17 months she's still to develop, so I would expect a little bit more strength of head to come along with the body bloating up. Depends on the bloodlines, I've found with that. But
This is from a slow maturing.
yeah. Once again, same sort of thing. You check your balance, nice clean skull. And there's your 4 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that sloping croup is short. Now here, our front assembly is not quite what I'd like to see. It's adequate, but I would like to see just a tad more angulation. She has a lovely fore chest. She has adequate depth for her age. It's reaching just above the elbow. That will probably body up a little bit more as she gets older. Her rib cage comes to here. There's her loin. In keeping with the style of dog we're looking at, a longer, leaner type of toller than say the short to leg to body proportion dog that is also my favourite. But nevertheless, it's a toller, and it's typical of tollers. I'd like a tad less loin in her, but she's a baby. She'll body up. I don't look at tollers for maturity till they're at least 3.5 to 4 years. One thing about tails, we talked about the tail being the crowning glory. To me, you should be able to hold that tail and feel it like a brush, thick and dense.
I also have a thing about having a really thick root to the tail.
Yep, absolutely.
Because it acts as a rudder when they're swimming. So I want them to have what I call a nice fat tail at the top, at the root of the tail.
I didn't mention coat texture and colour before. This is a beautiful flat coat. It's got sufficient depth in it and you can't find the skin. The best place to look is here, near on the flank, and you can't find the skin there. That's a good dense coat. Even though she may not have a heavy undercoat at the moment, that just says that she's shedding. But you should be able to see that this is really dense. She's lovely. I'll put her up and show you.
Thank you. Okay, girl.
Alison, Denise, what's your experience with these guys? Somebody said late maturing, and I agree, but what about size as you're watching them grow? What do you think you got to see?
Oh, it depends on the lines so much.
Bloodlines, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so a year, year and a half?
Well, it used to be that with my sort of own line that I developed, line breeding on 2 dogs and different that I figured they'd mostly got their height by 9 or 10 months.
Yeah.
But as I introduced more Harbour Light stuff into I got a very much more dog that went on growing well over a year. And it just depends on the bloodlines.
But do you still think that what you see at 8 weeks is terms of
The package.
the package is sort of what you see at 3 years? Or?
Well, you hope so, but I mean, if that turned out every time, we'd all be able to have, you know, get champions by looking at our 6-week-old puppies, and it doesn't work that way.
There's so
You
many
make
factors.
educated guesses.
There's environmental factors, health issues, and
Yeah.
all sorts of things come into play. I used to say that because our curlies were also a very late maturing breed, we would not expect a bitch to reach her full height before her second season. Most of them around 9 to 10 months, if they came into season at that age, that would sort of slow the growth period. Our first Tola bitch we brought in, she grew an inch in her 3rd year. We couldn't believe it. It was just amazing. We knew nothing about the breed, but very slow maturing in every way. You know, as I say, a finished dog in its full glory, to me, is 3.5 to 4 years of age.
I used to have bitches that were pretty mature by 2.5, but males not until they're nearly 4, almost 4. But that has changed with different bloodlines that I introduced, and I mean it's hard to tell. It really does depend on and again, as Denise says, on the environmental factors.
I mean, I train with golden retrievers, and I'll tell you, they just get so big so fast. You know, all of a sudden you've got...
Diet has a lot to do with that, you know, as well. Diet.
Yeah.
I don't like dogs having growth spurts and then stopping, and growth spurts and stopping. I like to see an even growth, and then it's more predictable if you can do that.
Can we have the next dog out?
First thing I see on this dog before I even go around is it's balanced. I haven't talked about height because there wasn't anything to say against essentially the others that I've looked at being what I would expect to see. Do you want to say anything about this before?
I do, but I'd rather you went over her first, and then you may come to what I'm going to say, what I want to say. But
as I said, I'm not here to pick faults. I'm here to assess the dog. But you need to know what the faults are. I mean, how else are you going to learn? Once again, the heads are beautiful on these 3 so far. This is a nice deep nostril. How old?
4 years.
she's going on 4.
Once again, you can see where I put my hands as to what I'm finding. You should be able to just put the palm of your hand through there comfortably.
Are you checking the width of the withers
Width of the withers and the loin.
between,
Oh, here.
yeah.
It shouldn't need to, because you can feel how high it is and you can feel the angle. It should be just as you find it there. That's just experience though. I mean, I would note it if it wasn't there. Okay, I'll give up, Alison. You tell me.
Well, what I think when you look at her, you register that she's long for her length of leg.
That's what I would have said, a tad short.
Yeah. But I wanted to point out that this is one of the few bitches, tollers I know, with a really nice, quite elegant neck. So here is the top of her withers here. And that if you go back here, and this is the end of her rib, what she has is a long neck and a long rib cage. She's still, I would like more length in the leg, and I certainly would like tighter elbows.
I was about to
But
say,
the eye can mislead you there. It's not, I mean, she is a bit long, but she's really not that long because the length is, the rib cage goes all the way back to here.
I wouldn't say she's long so much as she's slightly short, and that.
She's short, and I mean, I would like another, God knows I would like another inch on her legs, but I'm not going to get it.
Shoulder to upper arm to length of leg, should they be the same?
Shoulder to upper arm.
The length of leg?
Tad more on the
Tad
length of
more
leg.
on the leg?
Yeah. But you should have it should be a question of balance once again. See, from here to here and from there to there, it doesn't match.
Right.
Right.
So if you had a slightly longer scapula, then the bitch would have been lifted up a bit anyway. And that would have given you about this much. So, and
But
look,
I felt with her that it was a bit of an optical illusion because you don't, your untrained eye doesn't tell you that it's, I just wanted to emphasize that.
she's a beautiful bitch. The coat is lovely on this bitch. Look at that colour, beautiful.
Now, what about that tail? It's touching the ground, and it's supposed to be a fault, isn't it?
No, whoever said it was a fault?
The breed standards say it's a
No,
fault?
This tail,
No.
tail tip.
it says that it must come at, the last vertebra must come at least to the hock.
She's beautiful though, Hobbs.
Now,
and the tail
what
comes that
she
far below.
does when she is really, and maybe Miria, could I get you to move her because I don't like her tail carriage. It comes right up, and yet she doesn't have. She's not. Either she's got a slight
Is she a
kink
bossy
in
bitch?
there or
Is she a bossy
something.
piece of work at home?
Could you move her for me, Miria? I think you'll see it when she.
Sometimes you get alpha bitches that. Well, she's doing that okay, Alison. Look at the drive.
If she sees a squirrel, of course, or something. Choo!
Yeah, the comment you've made about the elbows and the lack of
Yeah.
height shows in that front movement,
Yes, it certainly does.
and that's.
She
why we
also
do-
did. She also did grow back a dew claw, and I had it taken off, and they botched it, and one of her legs has never been as strong since. So I mean, it's just one of those things. But I am not happy with her coming or going from me. If you move her again, you're like the rear. She tends to. She's hucking in a bit there. I mean, I'd like a stronger rear, and I'd like her much better coming at me from the front.
I can't figure how to move it too much. I mean, she's converging, she's showing full.
Well, she's my dog, and I bred her, and I can be very picky. But I mean, these are the things that every time I look, I'm like, you know how you do.
I know what you're saying. The right back leg is. Just
Yeah.
But I hate to do this because she's a beautiful bitch. She's a lovely typical Tola. You
Yeah.
look at that, and that's what you're looking for. A nice, rich colour.
Yeah.
Just enough white to show
Yeah.
you it's a flashy little girl.
Die for that tail tip.
And anyway, just think how many puppies you can fit in there.
Okay. Oh, did a beautiful job with Amelia. Thank you. Who's next? Yes. Well, okay. Yeah.
Okay, Winston.
Now, Denise, will you go over this dog? Then I do have something I want to say about him.
Everybody see the profile? It's most important to look at the profile first. Get an idea of the colour of the dog. Bearing in mind the picture you've got, if you like.
He's rising 4, isn't he? He'll be 4 in the fall.
Yeah, late November.
Sorry, I'm using horseman's language. He's rising 4.
Now, somebody would say the dog brown, and I think he's going.
Oh, I know, it's Chris.
This is our latest master hunter.
Yes.
Yeah.
This boy's done very well. And it's in the genes, I believe.
Yeah.
He's a little bit out of coat at the moment, so it's not too fair on him to discuss his coat. His ears are a little bit of a worry. Just a tad. He tends to fly them a little bit. They're set quite well. They're a nice shape. I wouldn't worry too much about it, but I wouldn't like to see anything higher than that or fly away. The ear is a little bit pointy and a little bit weak in the leather, which is probably the reason that it's very evident that the ear is not quite what you would like to see. Apart from that, I'd like just a little bit more angulation, a little bit more upper arm, which is very hard to get in any breed, let alone Tollers. So can we move him and see how he moves? Sure. Beautiful eye shape. Yeah. Great expression. Yeah, so the front movement shows you. That dog. When he's moving towards me, the dog is pounding. He's pounding like this. And that's because he hasn't got the lift. Remember I said your upper arm gives you the lift. If the dog can't lift that foot, then he can't get it back in time, so he tends to go like this rather than like that.
So it's a lack of length, right?
A lack of length of upper arm. But it's not, it's not a really bad front.
Right,
I'm just pointing out to you the thing
That's
that I
why
would
he
like
moves
to
like
take
that.
on the dog.
Tollers that look like they're going around a beach ball.
Oh, yeah, that's egg beater. Yeah. Marie, just bring him back here a minute, will you, please?
There could be a number of things. Tack on shoulders usually in the barrel rib cage.
Get him, put him up back.
Just doesn't have enough length in the shoulders. Straining to go around that barrel rib. So then you go like, so that's one of the reasons.
Would they look wide in the front? Here?
Okay, I just wanted to make a point about this dog, is that handsome is as handsome does, and that yes, he has some faults, and the ears do alter, the folded ears most certainly do alter the expression. But this dog is bright, he's a typical Toller, and God knows he's working in the field. He's just got his master hunter. And he's, so people might say, oh, I'm not going to breed to him, he's got folded ears. Well, learn to look at the whole dog and learn to look at the overall picture, as Denise says. Don't get hung up on just one thing. Granted, if I had a bitch and I disliked the folded ears, and I would not breed a bitch with folded ears to him. But if I'm wanting an excellent dog for either hunting or doing hunt tests or anything, then you take, what has this dog done? And what did his father do before him? So, you just have got to not be so picky as to say, oh, I'm not going to breed to that dog because he's got folded ears or something else. So, try to learn to appreciate the whole dog and try to learn to know your pedigrees. Okay?
So do you think his ears are folded? You said, Denise, that he has good size of ears, that the ear set is good, but it's just that the leather is...
Well, yeah, you can quite often tell in young puppies if the ears are very small and very pointy. I think, uh-oh, watch this one.
Bear in mind the heritage that you're breeding with. You're breeding with a dog which has collie behind it. And so from time to time, that is going to become evident.
But do you think that the reason that his ears are folded is because it's not as thick? I've got a bitch with folded ears.
I don't call this a folded ear, quite frankly. A folded ear to me is one that goes way back, and it's not a rose, it just is folded like that.
You might want to call it almost more flyaway ears. They stick out.
Anything that could go up.
Right.
But it can't, this dog is able to hold his ears. He's just on the go all the time. The ear is tending to a folded ear, in my view. That's how I would describe it.
John, could we have Eddie here?
Yes, but the leather is thin and it's a little bit pointy. Actually, one is better than the other. This ear's great. Have a look at him now, he's alert. This ear is fine. He's not doing anything with that ear. This one is just a tendency toward folding. To me, that's just nitpicking. It's not what you particularly want to see, but in an otherwise excellent dog, why would you fault it for something that's really not that bad? I mean, it's like saying, you just made a point about it, because a dog is a bee. Everybody's throwing out their C's, not thinking, can we put it to an A and produce plenty of B's to keep the gene pool alive? for God's sake. It's a small breed. Common sense. Thank you.
Now, I'd like to bring this dog up as an example of a big, strong, and this is the father of that dog. This dog has just qualified for the second year in a row to run in the American Master National Hunt Test. So they're getting a dynasty here, you see. But this is the father of that dog. And he's of a certain type. A lot of people say, oh, he's too big. But he's within standard. He's a strong dog. He most certainly could bring in a goose. And he's got an awful, yeah, you bet. And he's got a lot going for him. I happen to really like his head. It's a very masculine head. There's no way you would mistake this dog for a bitch.
Except for the golden people. Last weekend, I go, and everybody said, what a nice girl. I go, whoa.
It's a worry.
Well, Aiko's only a puppy still. I mean, he's not, yeah, but I mean, he's not anywhere near mature yet. And besides, they're thinking he's a little golden.
They could have called him a musk.
Yeah, they could have called him a lot worse.
Yeah. Water rat or something like that.
What do you call them? Your
Naked
swamp
rat.
sheltie.
Swamp sheltie?
Who we have still, we have Sarah. Is she the last one? I think we've had, who have we got?
Where are you looking for? I love him. I watched this dog go around. I saw him with the Feddingham Award.
How many more dogs
You
can we
can
take?
sort of tell a working dog, one that's just
Yeah,
He's a champion though, too.
show.
absolutely. Well,
And so's
I
Winston.
hunted my curly coats, I hunted my Afghans, I shot over my standard poodles, and they were all show dogs. They couldn't work there, they weren't a dog for me. I just love this dog. There's not a lot I can fault. I think his front is better than his son's. He's tighter in elbow. He's just got a little bit more return of upper arm to show him. That's his wiggle there. That's the scapula, and that's the upper arm. So you've got that angle. He's just a little bit better in front than his son. Beautiful dog. I'd have a lot of trouble choosing anything better than that in the ring, even though he is a tad up on leg to what I would normally look at. But he's all dog, he's compact, he's just a lovely dog. And certainly not oversized. The standard allows that, so why would you not put him up? If he's a dog of excellence, why wouldn't you put him up?
Because if you've got a whole ring full of little dogs and the judge has only seen little dogs, they're going to say he's too big.
One of the things I tell judges, sometimes you'll go in and you'll see one dog that's different from everything else. Don't discount it. It may be the only good dog in the ring.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Could you just move him up and back for me? Just keep walking.
John.
John, show your dog.
Just walk up and back.
Kelsey knows how to do is make a meal.
John, try.
A little faster.
You try. There you go.
Okay, on reflection, after seeing the dog move, he moves just a little close behind,
Yeah.
just a tad. But it's true. The movement is true, and he's single tracking, so there you go. You've always got to find something to forgive on a dog. It's terrible. I hate it.
Jane? Before you start, Denise, one of the reasons I asked for this dog is that this is a dog that, I mean, is actually not the type that I like, but I love this dog. And she's got a different kind of, but I find it a very pleasing head. And so I'm happy to, you know, I had this kind of prejudice, and then I've learned, I think I love her. I think she's great. I mean, I love this head. It's very attractive. So I wanted her to show a different type
sort
of.
just half close her eyes and look at you like this.
And she's got that beautiful eyeliner, you know.
We had a bitch who had looked as ugly as sin some mornings. Other days we'd say, "Oh, you got your makeup on today, B." And she'd smile at you.
Oh, I've got to stay near Denise because I've got the...
Okay, you have a profile in mind? If you try to go over a dog that doesn't want you to put your fingers in its mouth, don't push it. Just come from behind and put your thumb up and feel. Makes life very easy for you and the dog. Thank you. Or others. Sometimes they're handlers who don't really know how to bound the dog, or if they do, the dog doesn't want them to anyway. How old is she?
She's 6.
Okay. This is quite typical of most of the tollers we see in the River Australia. A slightly finer higher on leg dog. Isn't my favourite, but again, when you're judging, you're not there to look at your favourite, you're there to assess the dog that's in front of you against the picture you have in your mind, against the class. Don't forget that they have to win a class. If there's only one there, then it's got to compete with what you have in here as your ideal. I'm not happy with the ears on this dog, mainly because they're not high set. I would like her ears to be just a little bit higher and not quite as big. But I mean, this is picking faults, which I hate to do, but I have to look at this head and say that's not quite as pleasing as I would like. Just have to forgive those ears. Otherwise, look, lovely wedge-shaped head, a little bit finer than we're used to seeing, but she's a finer style of bitch, so that's in balance with the type we're looking at. Her front assembly, again, a little bit forward placed. She's got a slightly shorter upper arm to shoulder. So I suspect she's a little narrow, slightly tight at elbow because she hasn't got the breadth there to tuck those elbows back. So let's have a look at a movement. Can anybody guess what sort of movement I'd be looking for in the front of this bitch, given that I've talked about the elbows?
She's not very restricted. She's not going to reach.
She may reach, but she tends to overlap.
Hey, Sarah.
She
Yeah.
tends to overstep. She
Yeah.
tries to reach out and put concentration. But she's moving true. She's carrying herself well.
She's pacing now too.
Yeah.
She's out of shape.
Yeah.
She was.
But a lot of these rangier style of tollers will, unless you move them in the correct pace, to put a correct speed, they will pace. Yeah.
That's all I can.
Thank you. She's
She
very
says
sweet.
that's my mum out there. Do we have time for any more, Johnny?
Oh, baby. We have baby puppy classes in Australia from 3 to 6 months, and we have sweepstakes.
How old is this one, Dawn?
And I don't get to trouble.
10 weeks.
10 weeks.
She also just arrived from Australia.
Oh, there you go. Okay, that's put the kibosh on it.
Nice tail tip.
First thing you're looking at in a puppy is it happy? Is it a toller that's physically going to be happy? Is it? Doesn't want to be here. The first thing you've got to look at is eye shape for me. You feel the skull, and you've got that nice slightly rounded skull. The head, ears are set high. The balance of foreface to back skull, at this stage you wouldn't expect to see the balance. You wouldn't see it as long. All right, well I'm just going to do it this way.
You got any bait?
No, I don't actually. I do.
Anybody got any bait?
I feel the
We need to get her to standing still so Denise can. Here, Denise.
I was just going to feel the mouth, Alison.
Oh, sorry. So I thought you were getting her set up and I wanted to get her to stand still for you. Okay.
There you go, balance. It's a can of worms. Yeah, I'd be looking for a little bit more return of upper arm again. It is a huge thing in the breed. It's a bit of a worry, but stands nicely over herself.
Now, can you tell whether they're going to have a taller front at this age? You know, I mean, the sort of the...
At this stage, this puppy has good straight legs and nice thick bone. The plates here indicate that there's going to be a lot of bone growth.
There's a little bit of a crooked on this one leg, but it's not too bad.
Oh, that's only muscle. Lack of muscle. You feel the bone.
Yeah.
The bone is straight. But lots can happen with diet with puppies. People pump in too much calcium. They do all dreadful. They start running them around, jumping over the hoops, thinking, "Oh, we're going to train them at this age." Crazy stuff. You know, this is cartilage you're dealing with. It's not bone yet. So it's a face to launch a ship, isn't it?
Did you want to eat? She wouldn't let you have it, would she?
Thank you, Denise. You're welcome. Come on, yes.
There. When I get babies in the show ring, if they can run around with 4 feet on the ground and they look happy, I think that's pretty good.
So I think I think that's about enough, don't you?
Well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we've kind of reached the end, and we all have to be out in the field bright and early in the morning. Start looking at some
I've
dogs.
been told I have to say thank you because Martha was pressed into into doing this earlier.
Well, you're very
Anyway,
welcome.
Thank you, both of you, Denise and
You're very.
Alison. It's great.
I hope you found this of a bit of use to you, and that it was worth your while.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I found it really, really interesting.
I mean, you know, I get passionate about this thing, but it's I hope it's useful to you.